Yo, what's up? My name's Retro Pat. I'm 25 years old and I just got back into video game collecting in the last 2 years or so. And today, I think it's about time in the year 2023 to break down a list and go over my top 10 favorite personal games. Now, I think this will be great to look back at in the future and see how my tastes have changed. Although I don't see a lot of things on this list changing too much. Maybe slots 8 and 9 and 10, for example, or maybe some order changes in the earlier numbers. But I do think my favorite games of all time are pretty set in stone, but who knows? Things are always getting better and better, improving, getting more complex. Games are having more bugs and glitches due to that, but I think we could see some real gems down the line that really take over our lives. So we'll see what happens. Let's go ahead and jump into today's list. I feel like most of you guys know this, but I still want to preface, this is just my personal favorite list. So obviously, my opinions, my thoughts, please leave your list down in the comments down below. I think it's really fun to compare and talk about, contrast, see people's different genres, different games, what has influenced them over the years, etc, etc. For example, my favorite genre by far is MMORPGs and really open world RPGs, and you'll see a lot of that influence in my list. Some of my list is going to carry on some of those pretty stereotypical, just everybody's seen as a legendary god tier game, pretty typical stuff, but there are some weird hidden gems that people have probably never heard of before in my list. There's even one thing on my list that's not technically a video game, but I count it as such. First things first, I do want to cover honorable mentions. These are definitely games that would probably be in my top 20, maybe my top 100 somewhere, but I don't exactly know where yet, but I still wanted to mention them just rapid fire. Going down the list, those games consist of Crash Bandicoot 2, Guitar Hero 3, Portal 1 and 2. I feel like 13-year-old Retro Pat really nailed it when he said, my favorite game on Steam so far. Back when my library consisted of pretty much 3 games, Counter-Strike 1, TF2, and Portal. And Half-Life 2, how could I forget that one? Now this next one is the newest game to somehow sneak into my top at least 15 or 20, probably maybe 25 games of all time, Rage 2. I have absolutely fallen in love with this game. There goes the slipcover. And I just couldn't be happier with the $30 price tag for the collector's edition. I love collector's editions. I eat them up all day, especially when they're nice and big and cheap like this. Rage 2 has been blowing me away recently, and I look forward to playing it every day. Check it out if you haven't. Another game sneaking onto my honorable mentions in the last 2 years or so, a game that I really wanted to play on its release, but just couldn't scrape up the cash to get, Kingdoms of Amalur: Reckoning. This game is like $5 now, and it has easily become one of my favorite games of all time, easily my top 20, probably top 15, maybe top 12. This was a real contender for number 10 on this list. The only downside is, and what really knocked it down, is there's not really much of an end game. Once you complete the 35-hour or so campaign, maybe even go over 100% achievements, whatever, there's not much to do. The enemies don't scale with you in the post-game, which is a huge problem that I think Kingdoms of Amalur: Re-Reckoning, the re-release and remake, does address. And then the final honorable mention, one of the only games I've ever actually gotten 100% completion in, gotten all the achievements in the 100% completion in game, Bully. I rewarded myself after doing that with a nice graded copy, CGC 9.2, A on the seal, A+, excuse me. I'm okay with that. I'm very happy with that, actually. Black label Bully copy. It was just a really cool thing. I'm not a huge graded video game collector. I really appreciate them and respect them, and I think it's really cool to reward yourself with something like that, or getting a graded version of a game you really care about. Getting myself a graded copy of Bully to celebrate my 100% completion was a fantastic part of the early years of 2023 or late 2022. It's honestly one of my favorite memories of this year. I've actually been in the middle of writing a script for Bully for hours and hours and hours. It's gotten so much longer than I expected, and hopefully one day I can end up releasing it. Okay, one more quick honorable mention that I almost forgot. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. I was a huge COD teen, as pretty much anyone growing up in this generation was. This one was weirdly my favorite. I know not a super beloved one by many, but I think a super overlooked one. I actually reached 20th prestige on this game on 2 accounts. I was very obsessed. Alright, now we can finally jump into the actual list, the top 10. Alright, number 10, the Diablo clone that came pre-installed on so many people's Windows XP machines. I'm talking about Fate. A much more colorful, cartoonish, kind of dungeon crawler type Diablo game. It came out in around 2005. This is a physical copy of one of the expansions or later releases in the Trader's Soul. but it does come with the original copy of Fate with itself included. I do really want to get an original copy of Fate at some point. That is on my list, but it actually can be a little rare and a little pricey. Fate almost acts as a more linear version of Diablo, where you just go down one singular dungeon and go down layers and layers and layers and layers, as opposed to going over this sprawling landscape and overworld territory. You just have the hub town and then a dungeon to go deeper in. If anything, it's probably more comparable to Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, funnily enough. Pokemon Mystery Dungeon and Diablo kind of combined in terms of the combat. I always loved the style, the art, the builds, the characters. You can have a pet. You can turn that pet into many different creatures via feeding it fish. The fishing system is nice and simple and fun. I always loved Fate. This was one of the first PC games I got, or first games, video games, that I got seriously into, and I think it has an aesthetic and a gameplay loop that really does hold up pretty dang well today, I'd argue. There's definitely a lot of nostalgia for me around Fate, and it definitely kicked it up in this list, but I still think it would definitely be in my top 50, top 25. Even if I had no nostalgia attached to this game, I'm pretty confident it would still be on my top 100 list. It's a very, very solid game, and very unique, while copying others, but it creates a different type of feeling. Fate's the perfect example of a transformative, inspired copy of a game, creating a wholly new experience. At this point, number 9 on my list is honestly a bit bittersweet for me, as it's Overwatch 1, and many of you may know, Blizzard has kind of taken a crap on it. Overwatch 2 is not at all what I wanted nor expected. I don't prefer the 5v5 gameplay. That's a personal preference, but I think many players would agree. The quality, the competitiveness, the balancing has all just kind of gone downhill, unfortunately. Overwatch was probably the most intuitive game that I've ever played. I'm a very slow learner with a lot of things, to be totally honest, and Overwatch was one of the few things in my life that I've ever picked up and been immediately good at. It's one of the very few things that I just felt naturally inclined to and really interested in. So it's really, really sad to see it go the way that it has, but that's how the cookie crumbles. I really loved Overwatch. I'll always love Overwatch. I would have loved to get more into the semi-competitive scene. Calm down. I was a Lucio one-trick for the most part. I peaked at like 3,600. Nothing crazy, but I loved the game. I had a lot of fun, and there was so much to explore. So much depth, so many mechanics within Lucio, so much speed. It was a blast. I'll always love Overwatch for what it was. It's sad to see what it's become, and it's sad to think about what it could have been. Here in the back, you actually see some of my montages, some of my best moments of Overwatch, and it was an absolute blast, and I wouldn't change it for the world. People have already talked about this to death, but Overwatch is one of those games that when things are going right, it feels incredible. When the team is working, when everybody's listening, coordinating, when things are going bad, it can feel pretty bad, but I do think the bad feeling in Overwatch was much less than other team-based games. League of Legends. With Overwatch, the reward and the payoff was a good feeling, and then the loss was a respectable, bittersweet sort of ending where it did drive you to do more and improve. Alright, but that's enough talking about a dead game. Let's move on to a fantastic game. My favorite retro game of all time, number 8, SSX Tricky. I'm holding it backwards, of course. SSX Tricky. This game is phenomenal. It's one of the only games that I've ever speed ran. The game that I've speed ran the most seriously and competitively by far. Even just seeing this cover is going to ignite memories in people. You're going to hear that jingle that if I play even a second of, you know I'm getting copyrighted, even though I have under 500 subs on this channel, so I'm not going to risk it. But I'm sure you can all hear it playing out in your head. SSX Tricky is a phenomenal game. When you're playing it casually, it feels really good. When you get more serious into it, you realize how complex and deep the game gets, the mechanics, the movement. I love movement-based games, as you can tell with even my Lucio play in Overwatch. I love SSX Tricky. Please go back. It's one of those games that you can go back and try again as an adult, and you'll be like, it'll all come flooding back, and you'll be like, wow, this game was really good. It's not just nostalgia. It's phenomenal. It's incredible. It's SSX Tricky. On to number 7, we get more into that open world RPG theme that I was talking about, and you probably guessed it, I am a big Bethesda boy. A lot of these games, a lot of these copies of games that I'm going to show that I have physical versions of, I want to preface that I acknowledge console is not the best way to play number 7, being Fallout New Vegas, if you haven't guessed it. These are obviously better games to play on PC, but I do own physical copies of some of them, and it is nice to sometimes kick it back and play on console, even though I'd argue it's definitely a worse experience. I did get my first start for a lot of these games on console. Back when I was younger, I had a 360, but didn't really have the best family computer to be able to actually run proper games like this. This might be a shock to you, but yes, the pink Dell Inspiron that my mom bought off of QVC couldn't exactly run Fallout New Vegas or other high-tier games from the time. Fallout New Vegas is just phenomenal. It's really hard for me to sit here and say anything that hasn't been said before, but I feel like I continue to just find something new every year. I do at least one full playthrough every single year of the game. Recently, I just did a playthrough actually, and I found out that there was an underground fighting ring outside of Freeside that involves a quest line of you collecting eggs so that you can sleep with the owner of the operation of the fight club. I've never seen this before. I've never gone down this one little sewer tunnel hole that you can then discover this whole underground world with. I don't know if you guys ever find something like that or find a thing like that in Fallout New Vegas, please let me know in the comments. Like what's like the most crazy thing that you found so many years later down the line, even in any game, not even just Fallout, but in any game. It's one of the best feelings I find to find something in a game you've spent hundreds of hours in, that there's still more to discover, still something totally new right there in front of you the whole time. Number 6 is going to be a game familiar to many, pretty much everybody. It's Minecraft. It's not a hot pick, not a crazy pick, but Minecraft was definitely a very, very special game to me growing up, as it was to many. I remember asking for Minecraft as my one Christmas gift. It was like $23 at the time, $25. I picked up Minecraft on the later stages of Alpha. I'm that boomer who's been playing since Alpha 1.2.6 or 1.26, I believe. I loved it. I still love the aesthetic. To this day, I still play Minecraft every time with an alpha texture pack because I like these bright greens. I liked the more janky, pixelated cobblestone. The cobblestone alone and the grassy greens and the greens of the trees, like, that was peak Minecraft to me, and I still love that look to this day. I still enjoy and appreciate a lot of newer Minecraft, and I love a lot of the things they've added. I think it's really good to adapt and just start to enjoy and appreciate the goods. Or critiquing is good, but it's good to appreciate the goods. If you're that boomer who's like, new Minecraft stinks, blah, 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 you know, I think it's time to settle down, sit down, and figure out what are good things, what are bad things, or even just figure out, hey, I don't enjoy this, but it's good for the game. So for example, I was not a fan. I still like to go back and play Minecraft pre-hunger and pre-sprinting. To a lot of you, that may sound archaic and stupid. It is archaic and stupid, but I enjoy it. But do I think Minecraft is a better game without the ability to instantly shove a ham in your mouth? Yeah, of course. Sprinting and hunger was an incredibly good balanced update for Minecraft, but do I like the old stupid retroness of it and the feeling of having to have 10 or 4 to 8 inventory slots dedicated to cooked ham? You couldn't stack it. I love that stuff. It's nostalgic for me. It's fun. It's enjoyable. But is it, you have to acknowledge, hey, what do I enjoy? What's my preference versus what is actually good for the game? Minecraft, for many people, including myself, has been a pretty consistent part of my life and of many people's lives, and I think it is a phenomenal game for many, many reasons. I think it goes down as one of the best games in history for most people, and it's at number 6 on my list. Number 5 is probably going to be the biggest, spiciest, sweetest, most random hidden gem for many people out there. But man, I think this is the number 1 most underrated video game of all time. Plain and simple. It amazes me how many people have either never heard about this, never played it, never seen a glimpse of it, etc., etc. And I am talking about Dungeon Defenders. Now, I do not have a physical copy of this. This was a Xbox 360 arcade game, PC game, that is essentially a 3D tower defense game. And there's live action combat, as well as there is also tower building and strategy and point and statistic allocation. You build a character, you level yourself from 1 to 70, 1 to 80 or so. There were DLCs that added different classes, like the mage class you see here. I haven't really done much with, or it's called something else. I think he's called the Summoner. He's the Summoner. I don't have a whole lot of experience with him. I was always the Squire main. And I do have these 2 shirts that I quickly showed off. These shirts were actually Dungeon Defenders 2 promo materials. These are not from the original game. These are pretty hard to find. I tracked these down on eBay. You don't see them a whole lot. You see very, 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 very little Dungeon Defenders merch, Dungeon Defenders materials, physical stuff for the game at all. I'm really happy to have something. I would love to one day get some sort more Dungeon Defenders merch or materials. I truly think it's one of the best games of all time. It's a tower defense game at its core, which I think tower defense games really have fallen off, which is really sad to me. I think they're like an incredible genre. A lot of people appreciated them and played them with obviously balloons and stuff growing up, or Pokemon Tower Defense was a underrated game that I played a shit ton, that I loved Pokemon Tower Defense. But I think tower defense games should be brought back a bit. People played Plants vs. Zombies. I never really got into that one personally, but I think tower defense games are a wildly underrated genre, and when done correctly, they can have so much depth, so much complexity, so much long-term gameplay. You could play this game for hundreds, thousands of hours, and I love that. It's a grind. I love grindy games. You collect this currency, gems, you protect this crystal that enemies are going for. I remember my favorite grind on Dungeon Defenders, one of my favorite memories growing up, was to grind for, there is a pet item that is a giraffe on a treadmill. I know, very cool, very, very memey, whatever. Giraffe on a treadmill. And to get this pet, you had to get to wave 30 of survival, if I remember correctly. Wave 30 of survival on any map, on any difficulty. They were very confident because it was so difficult. Not only was it difficult, but it was time consuming. For example, every time me and my brother, we would do co-op runs of this. It's a great up to 4-player game, and it's really beneficial to have those cooperative teammates and those players. Every single attempt was 24 to 30 hours. Every single attempt. If you failed while sleeping 20 hours in, you got to restart. I loved grinds like this. As stupid as it is, I'll never forget the days of me and my brother passing out on the couch playing Dungeon Defenders. He would give up. He'd be like, "Oh, I'm cooked, man. You know, I don't want to do anymore." I would play 2 controllers. I would do them both. I would handle them both. Over time, it becomes very passive in the background. Once you get all your towers and set up, once you're doing a long grind like that, once you get your towers set up, it's actually a pretty AFK experience. You can mostly just kind of have it on the background and just like heal your towers and check stuff, and it's you know, it's that sort of civilization building simulation type game, and I love those so very much. I love Dungeon Defenders. Just by far the most underrated game of all time. The developers so clearly cared about this game and loved this game to death, and I can't recommend it nearly enough. Go play Dungeon Defenders. I haven't really put a whole lot of time or love in Dungeon Defenders 2. I played it for like an hour tops, and it just didn't click with me nearly as much as Dungeon Defenders 1, but maybe I need to give that more of a try. If you've played Dungeon Defenders 2, which is a free-to-play game on Steam, or Awakened, or there's other variants now, but I think nothing really hit as hard as Dungeon Defenders 1. Now on to number 4, a game that needs no introduction. It's been talked about to the heavens and back, to the Viking castle in the sky and back. Number 4 on my list is Skyrim. I think this game is just the epitome of open world RPGs. I think Bethesda really killed it. The depth, the amount of quests, the amount of content, the connections you still build with the characters and how well they're created, in the dialogue. I wish there was more speech options, as everybody does. I could just sit here and repeat the same things everybody said over time. I don't have a whole lot of super in-depth perspective that no one has before on Skyrim, right? Like everyone said it, people have put more time and energy into learning the game than me. I just enjoy playing it. I can, however, share a personal experience that I really enjoyed, that really got me into Skyrim in a different way. I think I played Skyrim for the first time in a very, very different way than most people. So Skyrim came out in 2011 alongside Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, very, very similar release dates. And I was getting those 2 games for Christmas, and I knew it. And my mom gave me a decision. I could have one of the games early on the release, like November 11th or whatever. One of the games early, and then I have to wait for Christmas to get the other one. Those are my 2 games, right? I obviously chose Call of Duty MW3 because it's a multiplayer game. I wanted to jump into that with my friends, play that immediately. So Skyrim had to wait for Christmas. I played MW3 to death. Obviously, we talked about earlier. Incredible, phenomenal game. But Skyrim, I played on Christmas, and I just couldn't really get into it. I finished the tutorial, and I didn't know where to go, and I'll explain why in a sec. I didn't know where to go, so I just went back to play MW3. I didn't know where to go because the only TV we had in my house in 2011 was like a 16-inch CRT. So I could not see the tick bar, the compass at the top of the screen. I couldn't see it. I was playing Skyrim like it was Morrowind. Like there was no little indicator to tell you where to go. I was playing Skyrim like many other players played Morrowind, and I didn't know that for years until after I ended up playing Skyrim on PC and being like, holy shit, there's supposed to be a tick marker. My mind was blown. So I played Skyrim in a much more in-depth way than most people, I feel like, because I talked to every NPC. I went to every town. And I think a lot of people played it like this, but I really had to talk to everybody. I had to experience everything, go to every little nook and cranny, because I didn't know where to go for the quests. I remember opening the map and closing it over and over and over again to see the marker where I was supposed to go as well. Man, I love Skyrim. It was such an interesting experience. It was a really interesting way to. It was a frustrating experience to play it like that for the first time at first, but I got over it, and I think getting over it was one of the best things I ever did. And I think pushing through and still playing it via that weird experience, via that more Morrowind akin experience, which I played Morrowind a bit, but couldn't get super far in it as well. But I played a bit of Morrowind, more Morrowind than Oblivion. I love Skyrim. I love Skyrim to death. It's a phenomenal game. I think Bethesda nailed it. People meme on it for being shallow. People meme on it for being released a million times. But I think that Skyrim is arguably one of the only games that could be released that many times and people still buy it. It's just that good. There's that much to do. I will say, in the argument of it being shallow, I think Skyrim's character is shallow. I'll give you that. And I always say, you know what? Some people will like The Witcher 3, and some people will like Skyrim. And the differences I draw between these two games is The Witcher 3 presents you with a character, a backstory, a story to go. It presents you with that main character in that storyline. Skyrim gives you a blank slate. I love those blank slate games where you're supposed to project your own values, your own morals, decisions, etc. onto those characters. I heavily, aggressively prefer those blank slate games, but some people prefer those Witchers where you're given a character and a storyline to follow and be invested in. Maybe I'm a little more self-absorbed. I don't know what it is, but I love those blank slate games. I love choosing everything, having that freedom, really doing everything that I would do to my utmost peak within a game. I love Skyrim to death. Everybody loves Skyrim. It's hard not to. Some people don't. One day I'll get my girlfriend to play Skyrim. She has not gotten past the tutorial, but it's a fantastic game. Skyrim is one of those games that everybody, every gamer, every person who's interested in video games should at least try at some point. And it's one of those games that many people go back to annually or just repetitively over and over again to play multiple characters. I definitely fall into the stealth archer loophole, but I'm at least a conjuration stealth archer almost every time. I always use the bound bow, and I always use some sort of summonings. I really like the seeker, the one summoning from the book place. I haven't replayed Skyrim in quite a while, so I'll have to go back and do it. I would love to one day get 100% completion in Skyrim and in Fallout New Vegas. They're two huge goals of mine. One day I'd love to. I'm not there yet. There's so many things to do, so many games to play. It's hard to justify going for a 100% completion versus playing a new storyline of a new game and experiencing something new. I do think I prefer the grinding, but one day we'll get to those. Anyways, that's enough about number 4, Elder Scrolls V, Skyrim. Number 3 is the thing on my list that is actually not a video game. I am going to be talking about Magic: The Gathering, my favorite card game of all time, probably the best card game of all time by far. A phenomenal game, a phenomenal experience. If you're lucky enough to have an incredible card scene near you of people who love Magic: The Gathering, it's one of the best experiences you'll have. There's nothing that I loved more than showing up at the card shop at 5 p.m., drafting, or even pre-drafting, showing up at noon, getting a draft in with some people before FNM, going to FNM, which is Friday Night Magic, doing that drafting, and once that draft is over, you've done 2 drafts, you just go infinite, and you draft from, okay, let's say FNM ends at like 8 or 10 p.m. The shop's supposed to close at 10, but they'll stay open. Some will, obviously. It's highly dependent with your local shop. Our local shop was phenomenal. I grew up there in a lot of ways. It was my second home. I loved it to death. I loved the card store, and it was a phenomenal experience that I wouldn't trade for the world. Me being like 16 years old and just staying out with these, it was a funny thing to explain, you know, see how these like 25, 30-year-old guys just drafting and trying to get better at Magic. I just really cared about getting better. All we ever talked about was Magic. I just really cared about getting better and improving and everything alongside that. I loved Magic: The Gathering. I still love Magic: The Gathering. I will say this is the one game that I play almost none of to this day. Every other game on this list I have played within the past year. Magic the Gathering I have not. It's sad that I don't really play Magic anymore, even though it's still so high on my list at number 3. That's how impactful those years were, you know, between like 16 to 18, 15 to 18. I played Magic. I lived and breathed Magic for 3 years or so. I would wake up, I would deck build, I would theory craft, I would collect, I would research, everything. I played every format. I played Standard. I played Modern. I mostly played Legacy. I played Commander. I played Legacy and Draft. Those are my 2 best formats. I probably was the best at Draft, even though I prefer if I was better at Legacy. But I think realistically I was better at Draft than at Legacy, even though I loved Legacy to death. As you've seen with the cards I'm holding up, I do own 4 Phyrexian Dreadnoughts and a nice Altered Stifle. Stiflenought was my deck of choice. Not a very good deck nowadays. I really got pushed out of the metagame. If you don't know anything about Magic, this is also going to sound like stupid, annoying, nerdy rambles. Feel free to skip on to number 2 if you prefer video game talk. With Magic the Gathering, they printed Fatal Push, they printed Teferi, they printed a bunch of these cards that inadvertently absolutely dicked down Stiflenought, and I was really pushed out of the Legacy metagame, and that really saddens me, and it really took me out of the game at a time that I was already like kind of naturally moving on and getting out of the game and focusing on different things in life as well. But I'll never forget Magic the Gathering. I'll never forget, once again, showing up at noon, drafting until 5 p.m., drafting FNM until 10 p.m., drafting from 10 until 2 a.m., having some people leave, calling others in saying, hey, it's 2 a.m., want to come draft at the shop. They'd come in, you draft from like 2 to 4 or 2 to 5, and then you go to Denny's, 24/7, you know, restaurant, order some water, order some drinks, and something, you know, food, something, small food, right? Draft at Denny's. Drafting at Denny's is an experience that every Magic the Gathering player should experience. I'll never forget drafting for like 15, 16 hours straight, you know, getting home at like 6 to 8 a.m. or 6 a.m. and going to school the next day. Man, it was a crazy time period for me. It was a crazy time in my life, and it was a blast. It was one of the most fun times of my life playing Magic the Gathering, living and breathing it, making irresponsible decisions, but also having a fun time while doing so. Being irresponsibly responsibly, I think, is one of the biggest life lessons you can do. It gives you stories, it gives you entertainment, you learn a lot. You learn a lot when you do irresponsible things responsibly, and I think that's something that is anyone could take home. So Magic the Gathering, phenomenal game, probably the most balanced game that's been out for the amount of time it has been. It's been out for like 20 years or so now, or 30, I believe, 1993. 30 years Magic has been out, and to be as balanced as it is always one of the most impressive pieces of game design to me ever, which is why I put it so high on this list at number 3. On to my number 2 slot, the game that most people know me for and that most of you who may be watching may know me for. Number 2, my second favorite game of all time, PokeMMO. A phenomenal game. I'll explain why it's only number 2 here in a second. This is my livelihood. I play PokeMMO for a living. Never in a million years would I have thought, if you told 15-year-old me that I'd be playing PokeMMO as a content creator full-time, I would have said, yeah, right, shut up, idiot, moron. There's no way that's possible. The game's way too small. I love PokeMMO. This game is everything. Like this, I know that number 2 slot had to be a Pokemon game. I love Pokemon. It's very important to me. Shuckle being my favorite. PokeMMO is everything that Pokemon wanted to be, as well as everything that every MMO ever wants to be. It is a long-term grind with insane payoff and rewarding gameplay. It's an incredible casual experience. PokeMMO is a good game from hour 1. And then it's also a good game from hour 10,000. You don't see that very often. That is extremely rare in the MMO stratosphere. So many MMOs always go with the mentality of, oh, like after 100 hours or once you reach endgame, it gets good. I do believe that PokeMMO really starts, like the MMO aspects start once you beat all 4 regions, which is a couple hundred hours in, but the game is still incredibly good and incredibly fun from a casual perspective, even from hour 1, because you're just reliving and re-experiencing a lot of Pokemon memories and nostalgia that you have, and Pokemon's just a good game. PokeMMO is phenomenal. It's my second favorite game of all time. It's just incredible. There's so many long-term grinds. I love games that allow you to play intensively, casually, have different skills and there's so many aspects, there's so many things to do. There's so much to do within one game that I can never get bored of this one game, and I can never move on. And I love that. I love sucking my life away, putting thousands of hours into a video game. I'm currently at around 7,000 hours into PokeMMO, and I feel like I'm just scratching the surface. I feel like there's so much to do. It's absurd. and I love it. I love Pokemon. It's everything Pokemon. It scratches every Pokemon itch that I'll ever have. I never need to play another Pokemon game ever again as long as I have Pokemon. It's phenomenal. Go play it. If you're a Pokemon fan, MMO fan, and for whatever reason, you know, haven't played and are watching this channel, I'd be surprised if you're watching this channel and haven't seen me play Pokemon or haven't heard of Pokemon. Leave a comment. I'd be truly mind blown. Most people watching this channel are from my Pokemon channel, and for good reason. It's a fantastic, fantastic game. The best Pokemon game and a great MMO. And on to my number one favorite video game of all time, old school RuneScape. I love this game to death. As many of you know, I could sit here for hours and hours and hours. I'm kind of exhausted after making this video for so long. I could sit here for so long and talk about my love for old school RuneScape. Old school RuneScape is by far the game with the most amount of hours I've spent on it, spending around 20,000 hours in 4.5 years, averaging almost 5,000 hours a year. That's what we call in the RuneScape community a 4K or a 5K year. Now, not actually, because that's usually EHP. I didn't have that much EHP, don't get me wrong. I was in the top 1,000 players EHP at my peak. If you don't know, EHP is efficient hours played. It's a skilling metric which players use to essentially say, hey, how much have you actually played the game in an efficient way? I was not the most efficient player by any means, but EHP is still a fantastic metric, no matter whether you're casual or competitive, to understanding how good of a RuneScape skiller you are. And if you don't care about being a good RuneScape skiller, you know, who cares? I really cared about it. I really enjoyed it. I cared about grinding the game and playing the game the way that I enjoyed. But let me preface, I do have a maxed main account, and I was the 74th person in the world, not a very impressive number, 74th person in the world to max an Ultimate Iron Man. So I have a maxed main account and a maxed Ultimate Iron Man, both of which I love very, 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 very much. The main account's name is Petrowski. The Ultimate Iron Man is named Pat Mowski, if you want to check them out on the leaderboards. I think I'm still I haven't touched my Ultimate Iron Man. RuneScape is actually another game on this list I haven't touched in like 2.5 years. Old school RuneScape manages to be my favorite game of all time, and I haven't played it in 2.5 years. I'm just too busy nowadays. It requires too much of a commitment, so there's a lot of somberness behind talking about RuneScape, but it's a phenomenal game, and I still love it to absolute death. Probably the hardest working I know Omega Lol about RuneScape, the hardest working week of my life was playing old school RuneScape, and that was during Fantasy EHP, which is essentially fantasy football for RuneScape skilling nerds. That's the way to think about it. I remember playing RuneScape for 144 hours this week, which leaves me with around less than 20 or so of sleep. There's also a 6-hour pre-log into the week, so it ends up being, what's the math on this? We can actually bring up the calculator really quick. 7 times 24 hours plus 6, I believe, ends up being the math. So 174 hours in the week. I ended up playing for 144, leaving around 30 hours or so for sleep. I believe that's the math. So 30 divided by 7, I ended up sleeping around 4 hours. That makes sense. Probably around 3 or 4 hours a night on average this week. There were a lot of times where I would play for 30 hours straight, sleep for 8, or, you know, etc., etc. I think this was also the same week where I messed up asleep on one of the days and I had to recoup. I think day 1 I accidentally overslept and I slept like 8 hours when I meant to only sleep 4, and I think I ended up having to sleep like 2 hours for the rest of the week, essentially. This was the most sleep-deprived tournament most sleep-deprived I've ever made myself. And I want to preface, this is the definition of doing irresponsible things responsibly, okay? I drank plenty of water. I was still exercising. I was probably like one of the healthier RuneScape players, especially during this competition. I was taking time to do push-ups and do curl and exercise, cardio, etc. I was exercising and being pretty healthy while being unhealthy, not sleeping, right? And this is something that affected me. My sleep deprivation affected me for 6 to 12 months. I want to say after I had sleep deprivation headaches for a very, very long, for like a year after. I do want to preface that sleep deprivation usually doesn't have any long-term side effects. And as long as you like recoup on your sleep, and you should be good. You can't like catch up on sleep, but sleep deprivation shouldn't have long-term side effects unless you like burst an organ in the process. So be careful, be safe, be irresponsible responsibly. My little motto. But I loved RuneScape. I loved Fantasy EHP. I loved competing. I have never been more motivated in my entire life than having a team of people beside me, us all working towards an insane goal that we care about that many other people may not understand. You know, many people may look at me playing RuneScape 144 hours a week and say, oh, that's so stupid. Why would you do that? it's like anything, you know, it's like NFL players, it's musicians, like anyone who cares about anything. I don't care. I always say, I don't care if you're going to be an NFL player and make millions of dollars and you want to do that for 20 hours a day, or if you want to be a basket weaver and make $5 a month on your baskets, but you want to be the best basket weaver in the world. I don't care what financial value, I don't care what other people think about it. I don't care what values it could bring to the world even. I think honing a skill that you care about, and that even if others don't understand, honing a skill that you care about, no matter what that brings to the world, is one of the most incredible feelings that a human can experience. I think our hobbies and our passions drive a lot of our meaning and our value and our worth on the planet. Not to put value on an external thing, but I do think that passions and hobbies really do make up a lot of our personality and make up a lot of what makes us human. I think hobbies and passions and interests, and that could be whatever. It doesn't have to be like, oh, you know, maybe you dedicate 20 years to basket weaving and then you lose your hands and you can't basket weave anymore. You know what? Let's start skateboarding. You know, do something else, right? You could switch up your hobby in a second and you're still you. The fact that you have that drive and that motivation and that hobby and that passion, that's all that matters. And I think most people have many, many hobbies and passions, and I think they can, it's what adds a lot of meaning to life, in my opinion. It's my little what's the meaning of life. I think hobbies and passions and interests really do derive a lot of them. And hobbies and passions and interests could straight up be hanging out with my friends is my favorite hobby, or helping people, or whatever it may be, right? It could be pretty much anything. And I think it's an incredible thing. And RuneScape for 4.5 years was that for me. RuneScape was my, almost a meditative experience. RuneScape was a way for me to process. I was very fortunate to where I could just sit down and play RuneScape and stream a lot of it, for 4.5 years, 4 years or whatever. And I could just play RuneScape and sort of zone out and think about my life and think about who I was as a person, and ground my morals and my axioms, as a cringe fucking, 25-year-old would say. I loved RuneScape. It was always a mental tool for me. I always said RuneScape was a mental tool. And there's a reason why you see a lot of bodybuilders and very intense or professional grinding people play RuneScape. A lot of bodybuilders play RuneScape because it's very, very comparable in the grind. You go to the gym every day, you don't see your exact progress. You play RuneScape every day, you don't see exact progress every day. You see the XP go up, you may not see a level. If you're level 92 mining, you could mine for 10 hours a day and probably not get a level, right? It's very, very comparable. Long-term progression and long-term grinds are one of the most powerful things to be able to do, and one of the most powerful things to the human mind. I'll never forget the day I got my first 99 in RuneScape. I still remember that feeling. Getting 99 mining was my first one, and I wanted it to be a difficult 99, not an easy one. I don't want fire making or cooking. I wanted my first 99 to be a difficult one, because once I achieved that first difficult 99 in mining, it let me know that I could do everything, and I could do anything. And it gave me the confidence and the ability and the power to do anything. And I really think that, to this day, as cheesy as it sounds, I think RuneScape is an incredible mentality builder, an incredible confidence builder for a lot of people. It's essentially a tool. Think of it as a way to set a long-term goal that may seem impossible to a lot of people. And then when you achieve it, you prove all the naysayers wrong, and you slowly build up a building block of like Tetris confidence in your mind of, wow, I can do this, even if I didn't think I could almost. It's an incredible thing. RuneScape is an incredible game. I don't think anything will ever replace it. Nothing will ever take its place. Many things have tried. I think RuneScape is truly, truly, truly special. Also, I never played RuneScape prior to old school RuneScape. So everything I am saying, I have zero nostalgia attached to this video game. It is all pure new age Zoomer experience. RuneScape is just something special. It's something special. And I could sit here and talk for probably hours about it. But I will not. That is my #1 favorite game of all time, and that wraps up my top 10 favorite games of all time in the year 2023. I'm really curious to look back at this on the future. This ended up being way longer than I expected. I wanted this to be maybe like a 10 to 15 minute video. I have no idea how long it became. But I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope it was fun. I hope it was exciting, interesting, maybe some good background content while you grind RuneScape or grind some other game. I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Make sure to leave a like on this video if you did enjoy it. That helps out a ton. Subscribe to the channel for not daily. That's the other channel. Subscribe to Retro Pat for videos here and there whenever I can, covering retro games, covering my experiences with games, covering my grinds, and talking about video games because I care about them so much. I think many, many people do. Who doesn't, right? In this day and age. But thank you for watching. Have a great day. I'll see you guys later. Peace.